because we have, for the first time, 5 languages. So let's pray that everything runs smoothly. We also have people in streaming. I'd like to invite you to test. You have the headsets, and then on the left or on the right hand side, you have 2 buttons. One is for the volume, and the other is to change and shift channel. So I speak Spanish. I believe that you are listening to translation in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian. We have Sir Thérèse and Sister Florence, and also Silvia, who are going to be helping.
A test for the translation. Can you hear? You have your machine here. Aquí. Bueno. Mira, esto es. Flop, ¿podemos mostrar los canales para la traducción? Esto es aquí, entonces aquí tienes que cambiar. Canales, sí. Mira, te dice, yo no veo nada. Flor, el original. Aquí, mostrar. Puoi dire tu? Gracias. Bueno, los canales son.
So the channels are the following: English, channel 1. Portuguese, channel 2. Spanish, channel 3. Italian, channel 4. 5, channel 5, French. Can everybody hear in English? Thank you so much. And hello. So he's repeating: 1 is English, 2 is Portuguese, 3 is Spanish, 4 Italian, and 5 French. This in case you would like to change channel. Just let's take a minute, make sure that everybody is ready so that we can now start.
Buenas tardes a todos otra vez.
Once again, good afternoon to all. Welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation to this meeting. I would like to invite you to applaud these sisters who for 3 weeks they have spent during these 3 weeks the Synod. Congratulations. Welcome to all those who are online or in streaming. 35, a few figures, 35 women, 2 special guests, 4 experts, out of which 2 religious women, 29 auditors, 18 religious women. In reality, there were 23, 10 out of these 23 other religious women who are here to my right-hand who have been representing the UISG, but we have others as well, fortunately, thanks to God. Maria Luisa Versosa and Nathalie Becard, the 2 were consultants at the Synod's Secretariat. So they, not only for this Synod, but for 3 years. Unfortunately, Sister Alessandra Smerilli, the Salesian, is the 3rd sister together, which truly makes us even more proud. We have Bernadette Reis. I think you are all familiar with her because she's been working for many years within Vatican News, and she has attended the entire Synod as the collaborator for communication. Thank you very much. Of course, we do have other religious sisters who have been invited and who have attended the Synod. Thank you very much. And these are Liliana, Mariluz. Is anybody else that I didn't mention or maybe I'm not aware of? Thank you. Daniela from the CLAR. Liliana is the president of La CLAR, and Liliana is a secretary, CLAR's secretary. She always attended on behalf of the UISG. November 13th, we're going to hold a meeting together with CLAR to speak about the reality of religious life in Latin America, and it will be organized here in the same hall. Now, with no much ado, I'm going to start because I think we have a lot to share. We have asked 4 of the UISG sisters to share their experience, but questions at the end can be addressed to all, and you can all share your testimony. Then we asked to Sister Bernadette and to Maria Luisa to present their outlook, but I would like to first give the floor to the president of the UISG, Yolanda Kafka, to allow her to say a few words, opening words, and welcoming you. I don't want to lose time, so just to say that we are truly delighted and happy to have you all here, and thank you for having taken this day to share and to echo the outcome of the Synod. And I think it's very important, since you were the envoys of the UISG, it's very important to have now a first-hand reaction. And thank you very much for all those who have participated physically to the Synod and who are here today to share their contribution with us. I believe that The document speaks about consecrated women within the church, and I'm sure that this is truly the result of the sisters and the religious women attending the synod who have achieved this result, and we do want to recognize that, and I think we will slowly digest and integrate the document, but we will always keep in mind these sisters who have supported and contributed to this result. And I think there are two fruits which are the immediate result. First of all, it's the interest it has arisen because the Synod has brought Amazonia to Rome. And so for those who have represent religious life, as well as laymen and women, priests and other religious members.
Adesso prova. Non sta funzionando.
Si sente nel micro, ecco.
So, as I was saying, one of the first fruit that we can consider is the interest. It's just as when you throw a stone in a pond, but it's also the other result is the fact that there's going to be a commission which is going to continue working after the synod. And I think this is a truly feminine, let's say, dynamic, because we do understand that better than men. I would like to take this opportunity, and while I was coming here, I also have to ask forgiveness on behalf of this city, because there are also violent people. I live in this city. At times I feel truly unhappy because there are violent people who have probably been evil doers during the synod. And I want to recognize this on behalf of the city of Rome and its citizens. And now let's listen to the outcome and to the results and the challenges that we will certainly accept and draw on for the future of the Amazon and for the future of Amazonia. Thank you very much for the sisters who have prepared their participation today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yolanda, for your words. And now I would like to start with Sister Rosetta Miranda Nellie from Brazil. She's a member of the Congregation of Our Lady. Now you individually have 10 minutes and I will stand up, but just to give you an idea so that we can keep to the time frame. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you very much. I thank the WISG and La Clare, because together we can live a lot and we can truly make a difference. La Clare, within the synod, brought the word itinerancy, and the Pope has acknowledged this as a true outcome. So with this permission of the Church, was losing ground, but now we as women religious, consecrated women religious, we can now carry out this with great competence, and the Church and together with the WIS, UISG, and the CLAR, we can certainly confirm our presence. We are not there to be servants in parishes. Our role goes far beyond, and we have to advocate for same rights, because it is also true that when we do the same work and when we come to decision making, we are out of the door because we do not have a right to vote. But of course, the synod and the synodal development has been extremely positive and has been wonderful, because we were involved, and everyone, even the smallest, was involved in conversion. There is no integral ecology if there is no human ecology. And the human ecology is far needed because it comes from inside. And these are small steps, small gestures with humility. It's a small drop which can create an ocean. So people who are married, if you stop and have a little drink with them, but that was very naive, very innocent, and that was just dignifying the person, just spending a little moment, a little word, a small gestures. And we know that when we are free inside, we can produce immensities. Religious life has this power, and that is exactly what we are called to do, men and women, to serve life. And within our houses, I want to thank all the congregations who have welcomed me. Notre Dame welcomed me. I felt at home, like as I was at my mother's house. I felt so welcomed. And that's what we are asked to do. But it's not always like that. Sometimes our houses have the doors shut. So let's dream, because these changes are needed for something new to take place. And we do need to produce and encourage a new birth, and conversion is can bring about great changes. We cannot do that alone, but all together in a network. In a network that can be done. The ecclesial network, it's like a fish net. It's also true that sometimes things are done in the name of God, but now we know that things and the moment has changed. But so we all have this mesh. But what we have to feel together, all together, because we have to truly save our forests, our wonderful forest. It's a new path. Something new is starting. It's already a reality today. And the itinerancy has to start from the inside, first of all, and then outside, geographically, symbolic, all together. And people say that in order to put all this experience in life, in spirit, with the God of life, we have to be fueled by a true spirituality, and we have to be generous and open our arms, because God has different names, but God is always on our side. God is always with us, particularly in those moments when people do things in his name, which he does not like. But we can produce a change, and the synod is an important moment. I don't think we will never be the same as before the synod. Something has changed. So together with all the itinerants, men and women who were in the on the streets, even within the synod's hall, and also at St. Peter's Square, together with our Pope, who we have to help the Pope. We have to support the Pope, because there are so many missionaries who have given their lives for the Amazonia, and the Amazonia was seen as the end of the world, where Pope Francis came to be the center of our world. And this is something wonderful. And people do recognize this. So let's continue, let's move forward, let's walk together, because we need to be strengthened. And this is not an easy task. We need to, of course, a lot of changes. So we need alliances, we need a partnership. You know, when a business person arrives in Amazonia, they don't even look at us, they ignore us. But the church cannot do the same. You know what they do? They partner. Even if they don't share the same ideals, the only thing they want to do is to earn more money. It's only profit which guides them. There's been so many denunciations by the sons, the children from the Amazonia, saying that death is present, unfortunately. So we cannot just do a simple catechesis speaking about God when one of the daughters of God is being abused, raped, killed. And so our land, our Mother Earth, is the womb of life. But then this poor earth, our mother, has been raped, and it turned to be a commodity. And so the church, with this female strength and power, even with men together, we have to support and defend life.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much, sincerely, for having highlighted the importance to work together, to network together. I think this is a bit also our challenge. It's also the invitation that we try to put forward. Let's now move on with Sister Maria Carmelita de Lima Conceição from Brazil, from the congregation of the Daughters of the Mary the Helper. They're here to support in her presence. Thank you very much. A truly sincere thank you to the UISG, because we are here trying to bring the face of the Amazonia, of a church which is living and which is growing in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the woods, even the cities, in the with youth and with all peoples. And I, as a Salesian, I attended this synod, and it was truly a surprise. I wasn't really expecting to be invited to the synod, but it's truly thanks to God that I was invited to the listen. We had more than 87,000 people involved in the preparation, in listening from the cities, the schools, the peripheries, and their voice was heard at the synod, together with many other from the Amazonia, people who were born there. We had this opportunity of traveling to Rome and to show the Amazonia's face. We, at the very beginning, arrived a little bit concerned before this structure, this formality, which is everything. The setting is so different from our very simple way of living, and not only in Brazil, but particularly in the Amazonia. But something very interesting caught us, because the interest of the church to be on our side. People who came from various regions of the world, from the Pan-Amazonia, they all shared the same, the Pan-Amazon region, they all shared the same goal, to search for new pathways. Why? Because the challenges are others. They're new challenges. Young people are searching for something different, and the people need to have different responses, and the same is for the church. The church needs something new. So this desire, this true strong desire followed us all along the synod. We need to bring something new. And that's what the proposal is about. There were very interesting moments of dialogue in the synodal hall. We were truly very surprised because we could easily take the floor. We could all express our opinion. And even in the smaller circles, we had the opportunity of expressing our opinions, of proposing what we wish and we want. And even through dialogue, we could reach concrete conclusions. So this experience, which is truly defined as a synodal experience, helped us to journey. We have been journeying for 3 weeks. And as it has been said, the group which was outside the synodal hall was sending us positive energy, was transmitting also making us remember that we were not alone, but they were with us. There were millions of people outside, which we brought in our hearts, but remained back home, and they accompanied us all along. At the end of the synod, I think that the church, I think she has now acquired a little bit of the Amazonia's face. It's not that there is any physical change, but it's the spirituality from the Pan-Amazon region. This completely different vision, and vision of the other has been very strong. We had the perception that what is different is a truly rich. Different is richness. And so even if they came with their feathers, with their costumes, it truly brought a lot of color. It's a way, it's a completely different lifestyle, which I think they have challenged the synodal assembly, but it brought us to the core, to the essence, to what is truly valuable. And another element I would like to highlight is that the synod has produced some very concrete solutions and pathways, not to set up burdensome structures, but to open up new opportunities of dialogue and also to face critical issues. It has spoken about liability, responsibility of the church towards a common home, with our planet, with life, and with situations which are truly a scandal today in our lives, and that we do need to do something. We need to act. So it has opened up new doors, opened new avenues, and that we truly hope that the commission, which has been set up, and we in our regions can carry on with all these proposals and not only remain with the beautiful, positive emotion and the experience, but now start something concrete. We now have a responsibility of giving follow-up to this face that the church has acquired from the Pan-Amazon region. I think we speak about the Pan-Amazon region, but it's a true world. It's a universe which needs this new spirituality, this new way of being, which is more fraternal. I therefore believe that the synod will not have an impact only for the Amazonia, but for the world, for the entire world, because this is also the work of the Holy Spirit, which may reach all our communities, the entire church, and the whole world. And I'm truly very grateful, and I hope that I will be able to continue along this path we have started here. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, hermana, y quiero...
Thank you, sister. I want to underline 2 elements you mentioned. First of all, dialogue. Pope Francis is constantly inviting us to dialogue, not only within the church, but with all, also with those who not necessarily share the main opinion. And this is an exercise we have to learn. The second element is what you said when you spoke about this energy which was outside of the doors of the synod. I think for the first time we had this female presence and we basically creating giving place to the Amazonia individually in your communities. We have a lot of photos and we truly feel a family of sisters, of women, so that we can support our world. So it was truly a sisterhood that we developed. We had prayers online, but I would say that the experience we enjoyed was wonderful, and to live in a digital space praying. So the online prayer has been a wonderful experience. Thank you very much. Now let's move on, and we are in Peru. We have, well, Latin America is truly in a very delicate moment. I would say that there are difficult and critical situations. Sister Suli Rosa Rojas Quispe. She comes from Peru. Her congregation are the Dominican Missionaries of the Rosary. Good afternoon. I'm also going to sit down because I feel a bit tensed, although of course I am familiar with the many faces that I see, although in the press conference there was truly a bit of a stress. However, I would like to start this sharing by thanking you. Thank you very much to UISG. Thank you also La Clar and the Comfer as well in Peru. And the sisters, the Salesian sisters who have welcomed me. And also tonight, I will stay with them 2 more nights, just in case the USG needed, let's say, more collaboration. I think that the experience of the Synod has been a truly joyful. Of course, certain things probably I would have done them different. The typical method, which is a bit the style, masculine style, which doesn't really fit very much with our mindsets. But we cannot hope to have everything perfect. But I would like to highlight, as you probably are aware, since you live here, you know how the Pope is simple and is close to everyone. I think that all the sisters felt his proximity and his simplicity, in particular the day they met with him, because the other days everything was so rapid that they didn't have enough time. But that day that they were alone with the Pope, they felt that the Pope gave them time, gave them attention, listened attentively. And that's something I would like to highlight and value. The experience of the meetings in the synodal hall and in the, let's say, the other, let's say, smaller and minor circle, I would say that the atmosphere was very much relaxed, with encouraging dialogue for a free conversation, even when we were basically able to express what things are not, what's not truly going well. And the fact that you could truly express these concerns or opinion with the pastors was very interesting, because we are changing a bit our relationships with them. And also I wanted to highlight the experiences of our pastors, our sisters, our leaders who are living and the experience, so are experiencing the Amazonia. It's far easier to speak behind a desk because you are not truly aware, and you cannot understand how is life there. Sometimes the heart opens up even if you don't know that reality, but when you live that reality firsthand, it is completely different. And all of this has been there during the days of our synod together. Well, religious life are called and named. We are searching God. We are searching God, and this is part of our DNA. And the Amazonia is certainly one of the privileged locations to find God, and also Amazonia is certainly can contribute for others to find God, because you see, we all know that in the Instrumentum Laboris Amazonia as a theological location, it certainly is something which has been confirmed is there. It is part in this document where they speak about Amazonia as a theological place where God appears, God talks to us, and God allows us to listen to him and to discover God daily. I think that the fundamental principle is incarnation, incarnation of the Son of God who became flesh, human body as a culture for the church. And this is what the Pope was searching for, because the Pope underlines with the synod that Jesus also has an Amazonian face, not only in terms of sensibility, but also in terms of commitment. When I received the invitation and I started to reading the text, and the sisters know in my contribution I spoke about humility and listening. Listening is a word that you repeated very often, you know, even 60 times. And one of the words which is more repeated is, frequently repeated, is the word conversion. In the document you find it 40 times. Conversion. Dear sisters, we together, we know, because we share the experience of religious life, of government, and we also, what truly is difficult are changes in the physical structures. But the text, the final document, insists about conversion, speaks about different types of conversion as well. And it's a message in itself, which becomes a universal message. And since Amazonia penetrates our hearts, enters into the Roman hearts, into the hearts of all congregations living in Rome, or congregations which have their generalates in Rome. And so we have to open up to many more places. And this can be achieved only, outreach is possible only through the love of God, and has been repeated several times. The source of all this is the love of God. Attention towards the poor is only through the love of God. This is our desire. We want to be able to express that. And just like the document speaks about the signs of life, the signs of death, but we can basically identify them with the young, with migrants, with women, to the displaced, to the many displaced are searching for jobs. They're not desiring to be displaced, but they're obliged. These are forced displacements, sometimes simply to survive in the Amazonia. And these are not easy jobs. They have to migrate. They have to emigrate just simply to survive. During these days, very intense days, some days we were more tired than others, I truly enjoyed and appreciated one of the aspects of conversion of spirituality, the gift of listening, the spirituality of listening and the annunciation, because we as religious life, but also as civil society, but in particular as religious society of women, we are often in those remote places where nobody wants to go. We truly have to renew our commitment. The sisters in my province tell me, you arrive, then we have a meeting on the 19th, another meeting on the 21st and the 25th and the 26th, another meeting with the comfort. And why? Because you have all this fresh in your mind, and you have to tell us about the synod. But you know what? I'm a bit concerned if I think looking ahead. Of course, what I was able to seize, but I also recognize my limits. But we do have to speak. We do have to share. And I think that the challenges that I do feel precisely now in this very moment as very important is a question which is recurrent. How are we going to support this process? How are we going to carry it on? There is no way to go backwards. It's a new start, but how are we going to do that locally, nationally, globally, in the short, medium, and long term? And this is something that we have to try to understand and answer, helping each other. We have to try to pray and to practice our ability to listen. We have to keep converting our heart. And this is what the document, I'm sure that you have read the document, maybe if not fully, but probably the paragraphs you're more interested in. I'm sure you have read it several times already. So another challenge that I do feel, how can I basically have this overall, this holistic view of the Amazonia? Because in Latin America, when we speak about the option for the poor people, one would say, be aware, because poor people are not perfect. And so this unbiased way of looking at them fits within the Amazonia. So we do need to have an unbiased look at the many realities of the communities living in the region, in the Amazonian region, of the leaders who sell or buy. If I sell you a ticket of 100 soles or 10 tickets of 10 soles, so when they see all these notes, you know, a lot of money, and then they also are paid with beer. So how can we help each other to keep this going, to support each other, and to keep also a very unbiased look of our reality? And I think this is very important, because in our experience of the church, we have created forms of dependence, and we can no longer allow that. And I see that Patricia is standing up. Is how are we going to express that? How are we going to organize us, the entities? We from Peru, we're 2021, we'll have to meet, yes. If I ask, I have a lot of dates already basically caught. So thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Sister Sully, because you mentioned the presence of the indigenous peoples, and it was something which concerned me, because I thought maybe one would consider it more as an expression of folk, but instead I think it has been an experience of mutual listening. And it is true that Pope Francis has underlined often the importance of listening. And I think that listening is a key word that we can underline for the synod. And yesterday, Sister Nathalie wrote an article, The Echoes of the Document. And she has included a number of keywords, among which synodality. And the Sister Nathalie is now focusing on a study. She's carrying out a study, a very specific study. So maybe she can then spend a few words on synodality. So we will now continue with the fourth sisters from the UIC, Alba Teresa Castillo from Colombia. And the congregation is the Missionaries of Mary Immaculate and Saint Catherine of Siena. The Lauditas is our name. I would like to thank the Lord, first of all, because he has been extremely generous with all of us individually for sharing in this wonderful place. But I would like to thank in particular the president of the USG and the Superior General. And she has kindly invited us to be here present to share with Liana, Daniela, because it has been wonderful. And we as sister, they placed us where all the women all together in the same place. How did they say? That's the, we were called the Trade Union of Women because we were seated all in the same area. Anyhow, we were very happy. The synod started in Puerto Maldonado, where Pope Francis basically officially opens the synod when he meets with the indigenous representatives and leaders, and he's there listening. And since he speaks Spanish and the indigenous people as well, there's a very direct conversation. I am here to listen, and the indigenous members took all the time to explain the kind of life and situation, because the Amazonian region is carrying very difficult crosses, and it's very difficult to understand the difficult crosses that they are bearing. And I'll try to maybe just highlight a few elements as my sisters have done. What happened? I love the sentence when the Pope, he was so happy to be in Maldonado. What he did, he brought Amazonia to Rome at the core of the church. I found that wonderful, wonderful, because he came and you cannot even imagine the emotion and the impression for all of us, not only us as women, but also priests and bishops on Sunday with the opening. Well, the Eucharist was very, very Roman. But then on Monday, when we moved into the aisle, you cannot even imagine. You can imagine how joyful and happy were the indigenous people. Protocol was abandoned, was out of the door. Everything became informal, and every day, the days were well organized and the agenda. Did you see the face of the cardinals and of the bishops? And the joy and the satisfaction of Pope Francis, of other bishops, so happy, talking and chatting. And that was incredible. That's truly, when we truly broke the ice, we felt fraternity, the joy to say, fine, this is really belonging to us, and this is really us in the synod. There's one of the things which I found wonderful and important: preparation. It was really very well prepared. There were multiple pre-synodal assemblies where we met with the bishops, with the peasants, with the rural population, with the indigenous leaders and members of those communities. So the priests and everybody came and arrived in Rome prepared. They knew what they were going to talk, and it was really very well prepared in advance. In addition, the Pope marked the difference with his humility, with his warmth, and such a cherished and kind way. He was speaking only with the indigenous peoples. And then some of the women They always ask you to bless everybody, and nobody's blessing you. Like, come here, come here. We were going to bless you. And he was so simple and also happy because he lowered his head and he did that truly with a great heart. And he felt blessed by these ancestral peoples. And I think that all of this has been lived in a wonderful atmosphere. Now, I would like to tell you one of the nice anecdotes, which I'd like to mention of the synod. I think it was with Jessica, no, if I'm not mistaken. Pope Francis, I feel you're alone. I see you, Cardinal Pedro. Cardinal, what is the name? Cardinal Pedro, help Pope Francis, and you, Bishop David, now take all these instruments, and these tools, don't leave poor Pope alone. And that's when he was saying, and we were thinking, we have to do the same. Tangana. So we have to basically help the Pope. So the oar and also this instrument. But what was wonderful was also the prayer. I would say that the true protagonist was the Holy Spirit. You know, Pope Francis said, you're not going to leave the Holy Spirit out of the door. And that's how he said, no, the protagonist has been the Holy Spirit. And it's the moments of prayer were really special. Particularly, we had 4 moments. We could speak 4 minutes, and then we had a moment of silence. Every time there was a silence, and it was really, everybody respected the silence so that we could truly interiorize the cry of the people, the cry of the poor. Now, what I find outstanding is the presence of women, where we were truly hard. I heard everyone. We cannot say who more or less, we all. We spoke with vigor, with resolve, and convinced, because we come from the region. And so we truly are living our mission not from a distance, but from there, because we are physically on the field. So I sincerely think that what was outstanding were women and the peoples, the indigenous peoples were the true protagonists. At a given, it was also a moment of fraternity. When you are in Colombia and it goes to speak with the bishops, one normally has to ask for a hearing. No, you could talk to everyone here. You could speak to the bishops, archbishops, the cardinals. There was no formality. You could go to one or to the other. We were all on the same standing, walking together, talking together with the lay, with the experts, scientists, scholars. It's a true synodality. It was wonderful that it has lasted such a long time. One of the realities which truly drew my attention, and I fully agree with my sister Suri, has been conversion to the gospel as Jesus Christ invites us, but with a different dimension, with the pastoral dimension, to be a truly different church, so that you can bring the good news to the indigenous people, not as we have done. We have to change our way of expressing. And this is also the cultural conversion from a very humble, simple, intercultural listening to the indigenous people. And then the ecological conversion. I think there we truly have to do that. I don't know how we will put that into practice, because what the sisters have told us, the reality is very difficult. the extractive industries, migrations, women trafficking, prostitution, the situation of youth, the amount of indigenous people who have to travel to the urban areas. How can you speak about integral ecology? This requires for conversion, and then the synodal conversion. And the Pope underlined the importance of this kind of conversion. What truly concerns me is that if we do not convert first ourselves, I think it's going to be very difficult to be able to implement all the content of this document that the Pope has given us. The Pope doesn't open doors. He gives us little windows of saying, with creativity, start working with Parisia, with strength, with creativity, do what you can. And I think that we can, but only if we convert first, otherwise we will not be able to do and to achieve that. We do need conversion. We have to eliminate all these mindsets, all these preconceived models and standards. If we want to have a universal church, not only in the Amazonian region, but with the face of all the Amazonian peoples. There's one question which I truly want to mention, which is the Pact of the Catacombs, where we reaffirm our commitment with the Amazonian Church, poor, prophetic, and Samaritan. This is truly something which I enjoyed and which I'd like to underline. But I would like to tell you another anecdote. We were all there. There was one of the Italian women who said, dear bishops, dear cardinals, I invite you with respect, take the gospel, Matthew 25, and reflect. And then she sat down. We were all incredibly surprised and said, these are very wonderful anecdotes. And I cannot, unfortunately, add more because I see Patrizia is standing up. I think you will have more time to share. And I think that it's very important to underline what Alba was saying, the fact that the group of religious, just like happened last year, was truly very united. So to feel part of this sisterhood as consecrated sisters. And I think that this is truly makes a difference because, and this is what has made a difference compared to last year. So it's a bit, let's call it the Pope Francis style, because he now is using this style. And if I understand, when they arrived in Latin America, there were basically 87,000 people who were involved in workshops, meetings, and I think this is an extraordinary result, this true synodality, this common path. Now, before moving on with Bernadette and Louisa, I would like to ask the sisters from the WISG if they can introduce themselves, the name, the country, and the mission. I am Sister Mary Agnes Jerry Wangley, missionary of the consulate from Brazil. Nellie Berti Ramirez, slave of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and I am in Santa Maria, I think in Ecuador, but some parts were missed that. I'm the Sister Marlena Franciscan Angelina's from. I live in the Diocese of Santarém, Paraná, in Brazil. Daniela Canlavina. I'm from Argentina. They always said I'm from Colombia, but I'm from Argentina. I live in Colombia, but I am from Argentina. I'm from the Madre Rubatos, Mothers Rubata. I am Sister Gervish from the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Paul. I'm from Amazonia, and I live in Manaus. Manaus is at the heart of the Amazonia. Molonata, Our Lady. The mic is not working perfectly well. Thank you very much to Bernadette. And she's going to speak in English. So if you need to listen to translation, put your headsets on. Sister Bernadette Reyes from the United States, but you've been living in Italy for many years. She's a bit Roman. She's daughter of St. Paul's, and she works for Vatican News.
About how much listening went on at the synod. I don't think anyone listened more than those of us in the press. Anyway, both inside the hall and in the other hall, just down Via Conciliazione. I have always said I was born on the wrong continent, and now I'm even more certain that I was born on the wrong continent. I tell people I have a Latin American heart. I begged my community to let me study Spanish when they wanted me to study sociology. Thank God I studied Spanish, but I speak like a book because I studied literature. So I told my Mother General once that I really would like to go to Latin America to have an experience. She said, oh, Peru would be great. I said, wonderful, when? 6 years later, she sent me to Rome. And look, the Lord brought Latin America to me. Isn't that great? I mean, the Holy Spirit is incredible. And I felt in the Synod Hall like I was in a university, but with the very people from that area were there to teach me about what is going on in Latin America. And one of the reasons why I am still more convinced that I was born on the wrong continent, last year we heard that, you know, there was a little bit of applause at the synod. Well, at this synod, there was not only applause, like you knew exactly how the participants were feeling. People would, part of their presentations were songs. I mean, it was just oozing out of them, songs and applause, and it was amazing. So it wasn't just that you were speaking, you were oozing who you are. It was absolutely incredible. The passion that came through in the shepherds who truly are preoccupied, who are concerned about their flock. My goodness, that came across so incredibly, even as we've heard, still within various paradigms that are hard to break through. At the same time, I have to say, what I heard from the auditors, from the experts, but most especially from the indigenous people themselves, when they spoke for themselves, I can't tell you, I mean, to hear from someone who's telling us that just recently, people are allowed to study in their own language. You know, we can't even, those of us who come from another world, we can't understand what that's like. But when I hear that, I feel it. I mean, 500 years and this is still an issue. You know, things like this. I mean, to hear about thousands being killed, I just, from those of us who were listening and that's all we could do, I felt helpless, really. Helpless, but then full of hope. Hope because when I saw the final document and when I heard Pope Francis, when he spoke about the final document, I heard what I think all of us, it's Holy Spirit. I think we heard Holy Spirit, like Sister Alba was saying. Why do I say that? It's because this synodal process that we all went through, the way I feel is in the Instrumentum Laboris, we heard, I think it's 129, they asked for the possibility of having the experience, now these are my words, okay, of the primitive church. That's what's happening, and we're a part of it. And I think that's what Pope Francis was trying to convey. Look at the diagnosis, he said. Let's not look at individual solutions, but let's try to convey the whole thing. And the whole thing is, just as the Greek widows one day complained and their voice was heard by the apostles and a new ministry was created, the voices of an unprecedented 87,000 people came, and Pope Francis has heard, and he's open to some of the more provocative proposals. Yes, it may take time, but will the Holy Spirit, let's wait to find out what the response of the church is going to be. Because as Pope Francis said, tradition is not closed 500 years ago. The Holy Spirit can work now, just as he did at the beginning. And that's what this church in the Amazon is asking, and I think they're leading the way. And I am tremendously grateful, and I say I was born on the wrong continent.
Muchas gracias.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sister Bernadette. I know you didn't have an easy job. You had to manage communication every day, a briefing with the press. The press ask questions which make our lives difficult, but truly the sisters have been extremely professional, competent, and very kind in answering to the press. Of course, I don't know what the press is thinking now. I don't know if you're born on the wrong continent. However, we are working in this world, which is ever more global. We can have roots, but we can have the feeling of the entire world, which goes beyond borders and barriers sometimes, or walls. We're going to conclude, but not going to necessarily conclude. But Maria Luisa, she has been appointed together with Alessandra and Natalie as advisor of the Synod for 3 years. So I think it's a very interesting charge. She's from Spain. She lived many years in Argentina and in Italy. The congregation are the Daughters of Jesus. And last year she was here speaking about the Synod of the Youth. So today she now has a different hat. She's here with a different hat. Yes, last year I didn't necessarily achieve the results, let's say, established, and I'm back. But I would say that this year's experience has been, let's say, an additional step forward. I came full of expectations, and I thought, but if you don't know anything about Amazonia, where are you going? And I said, yes, since I have a lot of fairly brave. And I would like to tell my sisters, my fellow sisters, is the meeting that we had, not in this room, but in another room, always within this building. So trying to have faces, places, mission, sharing expectations, illusions, that truly filled my bag with enthusiasm. And of course, if you don't know anything, you have to learn, you have to study, you have to be able to listen. So now my bag is full of learning, because the many hours of listening in the hall sometimes is has been a bit tiring, but it's like a new world opening up. It's like those circles when you you throw a stone in a pond, and every time I was surprised, grateful, concerned. And so day after day, and some days we started feeling a bit tired with the many contributions, and we didn't know really in which direction all of this was going. I started to feel fresh water in those moments which were more informal, in dialogues, in global meetings, where the Pope was the first, the big listener. And we noticed that because at the end of the day, we always had a moment of echo, and he gave us basically always his comments, and this showed that he was really listening. And so basically I reached was the moment of the summit, and when we were in language groups, it was like some fresh air, because one could finally speak and exchange views. We could say exactly, you could say anything, you know, the totally unthinkable. And then sometimes one would say, oh, what did the bishop say? A bit surprised, and the always applause is always a good yardstick, because some are stronger, some are very weak, and the young would do the hola, they would stand up, they would cry. This year was a bit more, let's say, controlled. However, after these moments of oasis, of fresh water in the language groups, when we then brought all the amendments together, I felt completely in the darkness, like in the middle of the woods, and I felt completely lonely. And I said, we have worked so much, we have spoken so much, and now where all of this going to lead us? We had no idea. So we felt a moment of loss and of loneliness. So they invited me to the redaction team. There were about 13 to 14 people, the Pope, and I was the only woman. It was only a number of, they were all dressed with their black habit, the Pope in white and me with my colors. Of course, the cardinals and the bishops had eliminated all of their pinks and reds and purple. And at the exit, it was almost 10 p.m. We spent 3 hours. He was on the door to say hello. And I said, you know, I don't start, you know, kneeling or kissing the, he likes to kiss, and I give two, because it's in my country, it's two. So I said under the voice, why did you bring me to this room? And everybody's dressed in black. And he answered, so that you can bring a touch of color. I felt so relieved. And I said, as a religious woman, I'm called to bring color to a work of darkness, a work of let's say, serious and formal, and to bring also light. So we started drafting, and somehow, as Saint Ignatius tells us, desolation and consolation are truly not our true drivers. And we started feeling that something was opening up. There was like a light and little sparks, then the Pact of the Catacombs. I was really surprised by that. And the Pontifical Eucharist that Alba said, and the prayer, the opening prayer, the procession of all the colors with all the feathers. And then when he said, we're going to have someone at the end full of feathers, because so this experience to see the St. Peter's Basilica on a Sunday in a way and on Monday completely different, I said, this truly is universal. Here before St. Peter, we are all the church, in part of the church, besides our colors and our worlds. And otherwise, that's truly what I felt. And that's the picture I remained with. And yesterday at the end of the closure mass, we continued to sing, and we came out dancing. And also, of course, the people in the square who were waiting for the Angelus were a bit surprised by our behavior. But anyhow, we concluded with a few elements from the Pope, which I truly feel those are the words of closure of the Synod, which go far beyond the document, not to be afraid, to be creative, to search. The document is something that you have to do, but I mean the message, a true message is the one which came from the Pope. The homily yesterday in the Eucharist went along the same lines, and the Angelus the same. I felt that it was simply a continuation, a follow-up. It's like a same message. And there's always a thread, a common thread. Dare, search, do not be afraid. There are no closed doors. There are only open doors. New horizons were disclosed. But it depends on us. We don't have to ask for any permission. We've been encouraged. We received impetus, and we've been sent in the best possible way in the world, not only in the Amazonian world. I want to speak with full respect, because some of the bishops, some who then met me and they asked me, how do you see that from the other side? Of course, because I don't live in the Amazonia, I live in Europe, I live in Spain. And it's truly, this kind of exchange was also very enriching, because I think we mutually learned from each other. So at the end of all this experience, I feel consoled. I don't know, maybe my sisters tomorrow will see me crying, but today I'm consoled, I'm very grateful. And truly what we have lived, I hope, and it must become reality. I think it's going to become reality. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, María Luisa.
Thank you very much, Sister Maria Luisa, and everyone for really respecting the time that you were allotting. My colleague was saying that those who are online would like to ask questions, but before opening up dialogue to them, I would like to invite Nathalie, who is here, because I think that this synod is the synod of the keywords. So I would like to ask Nathalie, could you help us to better understand this theme of synodality, synodality for religious women? I'll speak French.
Voilà.
So just before touching upon synodality, I would like to thank you, because it was precisely 1 year that we have closed. There was the Eucharist closing the Synod of the Youth. We were out of the church, of the Basilica, dancing and singing. And the same kind of joy, I felt it here. And I fortunately was able to live that in Brazil during the World Youth Days. And we must say that in France and in Europe, we have a lot to learn from the Latin America Church. And we want to thank you in particular for how much you have given us and we have learned. I would like to share with you what is at stake, that is to connect the two synods, the synods of the youth and the synod on Amazonia, because the Pope has converted the synod as a key element of, it's like a formation school, a school of conversion. Synods are the tool of Pope Francis, and we also listen other pastors that you are completely renewed after a synod, because the Holy Spirit has blown. And we have noticed also that many of the topics which were present when we really listened to the young people have been reiterated with greater energy and vigor at the Amazonian Synod. Women, the role of women, and that's something, and the synodality, missionary synodality. But I would like to share with you, there was sort of a strong debate among the youth on synodality, that is to walk together in a church where we are all together in mutual listening, mutual collaboration. The key words are co-responsibility, participation, and the synod of the youth. They were really promoting and advocating for synodality. Some of the priests were concerned, and so the paragraphs on synodality in the final document have been voted with a 2/3 majority, but there were a number who did not really wanted to vote. But this time, synodality was fully endorsed, just to tell you that things can evolve through experience and through the process. And I think this is something will continue. And now to come to a conclusion, what I feel and what is at stake, and which had already been mentioned at the Synod of Young, and which is clear today, is that the target is the implementation of Laudato Si and the conversion to integral ecology. I would say it's our true GPS, it's our true Google Maps. And in order to be able to journey along this transformation, this conversion of a sustainable ecology, the Synod made us aware that we need an ecology which is organized in order to, and structured in order to promote this kind of ecology. So in the key words, the synodality is the answer, but also the means to truly implement this missionary commitment for the safeguard of the common home, not only in Amazonia, but for the entire world, because Amazonia is like a laboratory for the world and for the church. And this is why the young people who are going to continue to be the driver, the driving force of the church and of this conversion to ecology. And I hope that religious life has certainly a responsibility, because they have they should make sure that the whole church becomes synodal in order to encourage all these forms of conversion, pastoral, ecological, in order to walk together with the young people. So also, as we mentioned, the cultural conversion, the ecological, we have to walk together with the young people. And there is a lot to be done, because we truly haven't yet finished implementing Christus Vivi, and we can articulate that with the Synod of Amazonia. I think that now we do have a roadmap which will guide us in the coming years, and I think that religious life has an important role with young people, with women, with the poor, and all those who are working for this kind of alliance, and with the indigenous peoples of Amazonia, and all those who are part of this dialogue.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. And if you want to read, you can find the document in the in the blog of the UISG if you want to read the full article. Now, before starting with a question and answer session, we need a moment of reflection. I would like to ask my colleague, everything is interconnected, which means putting Laudato Si in let's say, in a melody and in lyrics. It's in Portuguese, but we're going to see some of the images which have characterized this moment.
Tudo está interligado, como se fosse.
Pueden cantar, ¿eh?
If you wish, you can sing. Everything is interconnected. Tudo está interligado. It means everything is interconnected.
Esta casa comum.
Everything is interconnected in our common home.
Interligado, como se fôssemos o cuidado com as flores do jardim, com as matas, os rios e mananciais, o cuidado com o ar e os biomas, com a terra e com os animais.
O cuidado com o ser em gestação, com as crianças um amor especial. O cuidado com doentes e idosos, pelos pobres opção preferencial. Tudo está interligado, como se fôssemos um. Tudo está interligado nesta casa comum.
A luta pelo pão de cada dia, por trabalho, saúde e educação. A luta para livrar-se do egoísmo e a luta contra toda corrupção.
O esforço contra o mal do consumismo, a busca da verdade e do bem, valer-se do tempo de descanso, da beleza deste mundo e do além, porque tudo está interligado, como se fôssemos um. Tudo está interligado nesta casa comum.
O diálogo na escola e na família, entre povos, culturas, religiões, os saberes da ciência, da política, na fé, na economia em comunhão.
O cuidado pelo eu e pelo tu, pela nossa ecologia integral. O cultivo do amor de São Francisco, feito solidariedade universal, porque tudo está interligado, como se fôssemos um. Tudo está interligado nesta casa comum. Interligado nesta casa comum.
Todo está interligado.
Everything is interconnected, as if we were one. Everything is integrated in this common home. So now time for questions. So we're going to take a few here, and when you're going to also listen to some from those who are connected. Those who are online, can they write the question through the chat, or they can do that with the audio? Now you're going to see a few of those who are linked with us. And now, of course, any of the sisters can answer. If you have, when you would like to ask a question, please turn on the mic that you have at your tables. Thank you very much for everything that I am Paola Moggi. I am a Cambodian missionary. I wanted to ask you, how did you network with the other women who were not religious? This is my first question. Then you have said all the beautiful and positive aspects, but are there any expectations which were not met? That is, of course, the path will continue, but maybe it would be worthwhile mentioning them. Thank you. You can see this is a question from a journalist. Any other comment? Question? Now we were told, and I would first of all would like to thank you for the truly enriching and rich contribution. You said that the entire world needs something new. I would like to ask to some of you, but which are, in your opinion, priorities we need starting from now on? Good evening. I'm Adriana Pomola, Caritas Internationalis. We have also heard that this synod for the Amazonia did not wasn't limited only to the Amazonian region. Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Adriano Opromolla. I start again. I'm from Caritas Internationalis. Good evening, and thank you for this wonderful meeting. I wanted to ask the following. Now, the synod, the synod, which is, of course, the Pan-Amazon Synod, but as I understood, this should not be limited in terms also of results to the Amazon region. And so which is the message that you would like to convey to the religious sisters living in other continents, in particular where there are the biomes which basically have the same challenges as the Amazonian region? Thank you. Please. My name was a bit
Mexico in the United States, and my family is Purepecha. So my question is regarding language that one of the sisters spoke about when our brothers and sisters from the Amazon spoke in their own language. And so my question is how institutionally within infrastructures of our church, how are we going to incorporate languages that are indigenous, and how are we going to honoring the integrity of the cultures of these 87,000 people and indigenous peoples around the world who share our faith. How is that going to be incorporated more directly from indigenous peoples into the institutions of the Catholic Church?
Could you switch it off the microphone? Thank you. Dos preguntas.
So there are two questions from those online, and then maybe we can take the answers. Don't we run the risk that identifying ministry for women might deepen further the gap between the faithful, keeping women separate? This is the question. Is it a question clear enough? Want me to repeat it? But please be attentive. Don't we run the risk that identifying ministries for women might deepen further the gap between the faithful, keeping women apart and separate? The second question on deacons, women deacons.
One, elaborate on the synod conversation about women deacons. Was there the understanding that the ordination of women to the diaconate depends on law, not doctrine, and that the diaconate and the priesthood are separate and unrelated orders? You want to read again in English?
Can someone elaborate on the synod conversation about women deacons? Was there the understanding that the ordination of women to the diaconate depends on law, not doctrine, and that the diaconate and the priesthood are separate and unrelated orders?
Bueno,
let's maybe open up a session of answers. Whoever wants to, maybe those who have taken the floor, but also I invite the others to maybe answer.
Ok, il nuovo. Ok, il nuovo del Sinodo.
What is new from the Synod? What is new is the call to listen and to be converted. So conversion, what are we asked to listen to the voice and to the song of indigenous peoples, because the Amazonian indigenous peoples sing and talk. How should I listen? And how do I elaborate what I listen? And this is the true element of innovation. This is what is truly new. For those countries who are part of Amazonia, they have their language, they're multicultural. And once again, what is new is that for us as religious, besides learning the language where we are sent, we also have to learn the language of one of these indigenous peoples where we are going to be living. So our mission becomes presence. We have spoken of many areas in Amazonia where there is no presence of consecrated life. We also mentioned the various duties for our religious and consecrated life in Amazonia, and this is one of the challenges. Because there is a diminishing presence. And now the church in Amazonia is asking for formation. How are we going to form these ministries if we don't know, we don't speak the language, if we are not well integrated in the local reality. And this is what the Synod is calling us to do: formation. Formation of religious men and women. We spoke about of enculturated formation. Formation which can help the religious person to be part of this dynamic of listen, and which truly is part of the conversion. But what kind of formation can we form? What kind of formators do we have if we want to promote vocations, indigenous, local vocations, enculturated with this idea of mission? Then we need, apart from formation of formators, probably we need to have formators in languages, so linguists, because otherwise we will not be able to listen to their voices. Integral conversion, ecological conversion is also something new, that is, to invite in religious life other people and to listen to the cry of Mother Earth. People who are truly well connected to themselves, to their neighbors, and to the environment. All of this somehow allows us to undertake this route and also accompany those who are struggling for their rights, because the earth, which is a creation of God, the Amazonia is asking us as religious women to be part of this dynamics. And this is why we have so many martyrs. Let's think about Sister Dorothy. And this is what is new. Are we ready to die for our mission in Amazonia? Are we ready to give our lives for Amazonia? And this is the challenge. Are we formed as missionaries, but as missionaries who truly want to live and be in a mission? This has been also one of the questions, the challenging questions of the church. Speaking about the ministry of women within the church, in the document, as one sentence, one word, to recognize the presence of women. So since the 70s, my congregation, which has been present in the Amazonia for over 70 years, but we are not alone, the sisters have been also coordinator of the community, which bring the word of the Lord at the more remote places where you don't have priests, where you don't have any ordained ministers, but women are there. And women, lay women in Amazonia, we do have women who are in the community and who are working at the grassroots, and they're the ones who are bringing the word, and they listen to the people, even if there's no priest who can celebrate the sacrament of reconciliation. Women are there to reconcile lives. And I think that creating a ministry for women is not something which will happen in a separate way, because women are already there. And we also know that after the Second Vatican Council, Saint Paul VI, in his message to women, what did he say? Women, the woman is the first to feel the secret of life as a gift. We don't, there's no secret to us as women. And so also if this opportunity to become deacons, or if we cannot become women deacon, women in any case will always be there Even where there is no life, women are there. Even the simple women who live there in the interland, they feel the same. They say, I went to search for fruits. Why did you do? It's not the season. Women do not use technical formal words. The women are practical, concrete, and this will always be contribution of women within the church. Thank you very much. Can I ask you to maybe shorter answers? As the sister said, priority of religious life today. How did we help women there present? I think that one of the priorities is the networking and the intercongregational work. Alone, you cannot do anything. It requires deep creativity, and we truly have to support each other. I think the Pope has used a word which has been already mentioned and which for me has been a key. The somehow he always uses the borderline, and he says, go beyond every standard and prefixed limits, go beyond. So he invited us from the Latin America to be part of the synodal work. And this is a work in network that we will have to keep strengthening. It's also important to basically join our work to other conferences, to other initiatives, because we have a prophetic voice and we cannot silence this voice. And the women, we women in the synod, we had virtual meetings in smaller groups promoting reflection, but with a great responsibility with respect to the synod. But also during the synod, we had working groups. We would meet in order to try to see how could we continue reflecting on maybe the synod's contributions that we could maybe bring to the process. And I think it has been wonderful also that everybody was available. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those women who were not physically within the hall, the Synod's hall, but who have kept supporting all the people from outside the hall, from Repam, from the common house in Traspontina, with their face, never tired, always present, always standing up. And it's something which gave me an energy and a strength which truly I could never say I was tired when there were other sisters who had maybe had journeyed far more than we had did. So this is something which is certainly not going to go backwards. There's no way back. We just can move forward, and we have to continue working in a network. Sister Suli. The question, this was a synod for Amazonia, and what is the message for religious? Our charism is a gift for the church, wherever we are. So there's certainly a principle of solidarity which is bringing us close to each other, and which somehow promotes sisterhood. So it doesn't matter what happens in Africa, in Asia, in Syria, or in Amazonia. But unfortunately, at times we live separately in a fragmented way and not expressing solidarity. But instead, I believe that the experience of our authorities is that we should try to give impetus to our experiences through the world, whatever is the conference of religious, intercongregational experiences, all the mixed experiences which are taking place of female religious experience, female or male experience, because when we have to defend life, besides what we say that Amazonia is the lung of the world, but yes, we will continue living and let's think what happened recently. The fires did not affect only Peru, Chile, Colombia, and Brazil. They go beyond the effect of what is happening in Amazonia. We suffer, we all suffer the consequences, which means we are called to be very responsible for the future of our sisters and brothers, far beyond of what we can bring with our religious life. We must not, of course, forget and overlook our charism, but because our charism is a gift for the universal church. There's something very short I would like to add with respect to question 5, whether women ordination. I personally believe that certainly the structure of the church should change, because otherwise we can fall into the same clericalism, in the same clerical model. And this kind of ministry, I don't want this kind of ministry, but of course I fully respect other, let's say, stands, but I think that this has to change. This has to change within the church. If truly it wants to include languages, liturgy, symbols, different symbols, is in order, so us as a church, we should be within the civil fields, just like you say in politics. This does not belong to you, but the social doctrine of the church is our best letter of presentation. But we have to change. And it's not, we're not here to discuss what is good and what is bad, but our brothers also have to contribute to this change.
Quisiera decir como
I would like to add 2 more elements. First of all, with respect to women, the founder, Mother Laura, she has founded in 1914 our congregation. And the women could be either married or she would enter a convent at the time. These were the only 2 alternatives for women in Colombia. And Mother Laura said, no, I am going to break with this kind of structure and I'm going to go into the woods, and she funds and she establishes this congregation. But the main problem that she had in establishing the congregation was with the church, particularly with the hierarchical church. And this woman didn't have the presence of the Eucharist, and Eucharist was fundamental for religious life. But Mother Laura says, but she has nature, although we don't have an altar. And we continue living there in the same places of the last, the poorest, the humble. It is the woman. We have continued, we have always been there together on their side of indigenous peoples, of good living, working with them, living with them side by side with indigenous peoples. And we truly did not need for them to say you have to be a deacon or whatever. We don't have any name or title, but we just promote life. And that when we say, don't you realize that Amazonia and extractive industry are destroying them, and that the rivers are full of polluting agents and they can no longer drink the water? And deforestation is dramatic due to narco-traffic, migration. But all of this is not important. What prevails is the fact that you're a deacon or not? No, life is what is prevailing and priority. When you are before a child who is dying, that's what you should be concerned with. We are involved in our service, so we maybe are not involved in education, but many congregations are thinking at a bilingual, intercultural and political formation for leaders, because leaders are also being threatened. We also feel sorry. And then because you start thinking about the Giri Pravati and else. No, the Pope was saying, sometimes you are caught by little small details and we forget about the big picture. And the Pope said, if you don't be careful to the big picture, we are all going to die. But why don't we just join forces? Why don't we unite our hands and strengths and networks before this world which is dying? If you have been San Jose de los Jaguares in Colombia, there are land which have been destroyed to sow coca, and the indigenous peoples, the Luka Maku, are being completely exterminated. Is anybody concerned with that? Nobody's saying a word. Nobody is protesting. It's like a cry in the desert. And this is truly painful. And these indigenous cultures were about to disappear, to be extinguished. And there's one person with the feathers who comes here to speak. But why don't we simply join forces? And why don't we struggle, not so much for those who are planting coke, but for those rather who are consuming the drugs? Because on the one hand, we destroy the land and other people are instead consuming drugs. And what about human rights? We could be we are deaconesses, even if the church doesn't want to approve our role, but we are doing it. And many congregations feel the same. And these are many congregations from different parts of Latin America. Let's think about the Andes and many other areas in the Pacific region and on the Pacific Rim. Is this universal? Yes. Conversion is for all, a conversion of life, of lifestyle. That is what Pope Francis is calling us. And we're not consistent very often. But I feel sorry that we try to focus only on certain things and we don't think about the cross, the true cross that is in Amazonia and that's suffering.
Nonata
and Bernadette. I'm going to answer about the question on languages. In the document, there is this proposal, which is a very concrete proposal. How can we improve the question in the reality in the Amazonia? This is number 62 of the document, which they are suggesting to create a network of schools, of bilingual schools, in order to cater for the needs of the different cultures, taking into account the language differences. And then in the last chapter where you speak about the creation of an Amazonian right, and this is chapter 118, where it speaks about the possibility to set up a competent commission to study an Amazonian rite, and also to express the liturgical, theological, and disciplinary and spiritual heritage of the Amazon and of the indigenous peoples.
The priority. The response that I heard from the Synod is we have got to adopt kenosis. In other words, we have got to stop going to the world thinking that we have the answers. And one of the best definitions that I heard in the group that I was in is how we can accompany the indigenous peoples is by letting them accompany us. In other words, our whole way of going about mission is actually got to be exactly the opposite. To start from kenosis. I think that regarding the questions about women deacons, the people were very aware of the doctrine and the canon law and everything. I think what Michael Cherney said at the press conference probably is the best response, that the Synod knew that there are various levels at which various things in the church need to be discussed, and they knew that the Synod was not that area. from what I gather is the church understands now that one culture does not fit all, and is going to allow some cultural adaptation in a way that it may never have allowed before. And what we're beginning to realize is all of our understanding of sacraments and orders comes from a time and a place that is Europe in the late Middle Ages, scholastic period, that no longer corresponds to what we are living. This is how I'm interpreting it. And it may take a while for the church to grapple with that and try to understand how the living tradition that's been lived and interacting with history, how it may need to be adapted to an international context in which there are many different cultures, and in the Amazon region, cultures within cultures within cultures within cultures, but also affecting religious life. The models don't work anymore. And if we religious don't begin to understand that and change the models within we as religious congregations operate, I think this is one way the Amazon Synod can spill over into the wider church, specifically in religious life.
Lamentablemente.
Unfortunately, we have to close our meeting. However, this process, as the sister said, is starting now, just after the end of the Synod. There was one question that we received, that is the UISG already has a commission, a campaign promoting ecology, which is sowers of peace for the planet. So having a commission for ecology, we could use this campaign. Now, before, and I see that you're ready to travel, others are maybe staying a bit longer, I would like to ask you the following. Just a word that you can bring to your country. The first word that you're going to share with your people who sent you, one word, not two, one single word to the synodal members. Maybe we start from this side. One word. Hope, conversion, challenges, prophetism, and annunciation, opportunity, conversion, novelty, sorry, joy, interinstitutional, conversion, conviction, to open the heart, spillover. Wonderful, thank you very much. As all the meeting, we're gonna have mystics and also food for thought and food for the stomach. So in the room on the side, on the hall outside, there's a bit to drink and a little snack so that you can continue interacting with all these women. But before ending, I would like to share with you a message of the opening session of the synod, the Pope made a speech on fire, which all along the synod made me think about this symbol, which they call chohema. Can we learn a new language? Chohema. Can you repeat this word, please? This is a little tool that you use to give a bit of sort of to restart your fire, so to kindle your fire at any time of the day or the night. It came to my mind when the Pope said, let's light the fire. We cannot allow the ashes to cover the fire. So chohema is a very important ritual. It kindles the fire. Why? Because the fire does not start alone. Because if you don't kindle the fire, it dies. And this is also something new in our religious life. We have to know to kindle the fire of our charism. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianes, to leave us with this message of hope. And I would like to read what a sister writes in the chat. Can we dream a church as a common house?
E lancei as redes para pescar, avancei para as águas mais profundas, redes para pescar. Tudo está interligado, como se fôssemos Tudo está interligado nesta casa comum. Tudo está interligado, como se fôssemos